Peace and blessings, family. Let me tag these products on here. Let's see. Okay. Welcome, welcome. Give me a thumbs up in the chat and let me know where you are tuning in from. But give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. I see Nubia La Flo, Jermaine Todd. Welcome, welcome. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Because I'm using my earpiece and I don't know if it is working or not. No, yes. Can you all hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. We're going to do our Q&A because I got some questions that you all been answering. Okay, Nubia LaFlo, walaikum salam. She says she can hear me fine. Welcome, welcome. Let me know where you all chiming in from. We'll give people a couple minutes to come into the room. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad YouTube page while we waiting on everybody else to come in. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. And after these 7 questions, I'll give you an opportunity, you guys an opportunity to put something in the chat. I see you, Kentucky. I'll give you an opportunity to put questions in the chat. I promise I'm going to do them in backwards order because they're kind of, I think the way you guys sent them to me, it's kind of powerful. I'll go backwards with them. Okay. All right. Okay, so first question. Welcome, welcome. I see you all here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. We're going to do a Q&A today on this live. How many of you all checked out the broadcast I did over the weekend? Saturday evening, I did Closing the Gap. And then Saturday morning, I did the Sajdah Saturday morning coffee talks. Then Thursday night, we had a very powerful show with Vanguard Beauty. Let me know if you check that out. Welcome, welcome. I see you. All right, so here we go. The first one is, how important is it to be an example to others? Seems like a pretty simple question, right? In my opinion, it's very important to be an example to others. And I'll tell you a little bit of a twist of something that I've been thinking about. Because I see so many programs and things where they say, oh, this or that is for the youth and this or that is for, young people. And walaikum salam, love some you. But I think sometimes what we forget is to be an example for not only just our youth, but for adults across the board. I personally think it is quite motivating if you're trying to do something, but you see somebody else that looks like you doing it. And so examples and kind of paving the way for somebody is really important. It's real simple, right? It's like people who run a certain speed limit, a speed in a mile, like a certain speed on a race. Once one person does it, then everybody else is then chasing that record, and the more people do it and do it over and over again, right? It's like the 4-minute mile, I guess is what I was trying to think of. For a while, 4-minute mile back in the day was like, nobody could do it. And then all of a sudden, everybody's doing 4-minute miles. People are doing under 4-minute miles. It's nothing. So there's power in that example, and there's power in being around people who are doing something that you wanted to be able to do, or that you're working on, there's power in that. Okay. So yes, it is very important. So how important is it to be an example to others? It is extremely important. Okay, you always have to remember somebody's looking at you. Somebody's motivated by your triumph, by your success, by what you're overcoming. Somebody's motivated by that. And so it's important to remember that. All right, no matter what, not just young people, because we get caught up and say, oh, and you be an example to the youth. Your motivation for it can be a motivation for any and everybody who locks into your energy and your vibration and says, hey, I can do that too. Or that made me realize that I'm stronger than what I think I am. Okay. All right. You guys see pinned here to the bottom is the commemorative Elijah coins. Hopefully you guys will go out and get yours. Here's another one. If you've done business in Africa, why have you not relocated to Africa? Y'all putting me out the country is that what y'all doing? It says, if you've done business in Africa, why have you not relocated to Africa? So some of you all know this story. I tried to move to Africa 3 times. And when I say tried, this is what I mean. The first time that I tried to move to Africa was when I had just graduated from college. I was going to go to graduate school and major in international finance. I applied to a program, and I wanted to go into the program and then go to Africa. The program was going to send me to France first, and then to French-speaking Africa, probably like Senegal or certain parts of Sierra Leone or something. And I had filled out all the paperwork. I was ready to go. And that was on a Monday. On that Thursday, I was invited to an auditorium in Indianapolis with some corporate friends of mine to hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. One thing led to another, and then I was invited to move to Chicago to help out in the National Secretary's office. So I let go of the program in international finance and the possible movement to Africa. That was the first time. Second time was right after my father passed. So he passed in January 17th, 2009. So somewhere right after that, I have found a consulting project, because at that time I was a business consultant, doing pretty well as a business consultant. I wasn't necessarily working for myself. I was working for a firm, and then I was contracting out with companies who offered business consulting. Doing good, making some good money. And I decided that I was going to accept a project as an independent consultant in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I was all set to go, all ready to go. And I went to a friend of mine's house. She's not on here today. To Tamika's house. Tamika was a great friend of mine at that time. And she and I, we always used to hang out. And I went by her house to say goodbye to her family, because I was thinking I was going to be going to South Africa. And I actually told them before I told my own family. And even before I told my boyfriend at the time, I didn't. So she and her family, she was the first person I told that I was about to move to Johannesburg. And she begged me not to go. And she talked and talked and talked so much until I was like, well, I agreed to wait. And she said to me, she said, what if you get a big project here? And what if you get the project of a lifetime? And blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, I ended up getting a project with the Department of Treasury under the Obama administration, like within a couple of weeks after she begged me to wait. And then that led to me meeting my business partner in Maryland, and then building the clinics and the surgery centers, the micro hospital. So that's the second time I tried to move to Africa. The third time I tried to move to Africa was let's see, this is so 2019, okay. I have been working and going back and forth to the continent with different trade organizations. And this particular time, I was like, I'm going to get a place and we're going to build this hospital over there. And I'm pretty much going to start spending the majority of my time there. This is actually in Nigeria. I'm out, I'm going. And on my way there, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House came up for sale. Many of you know how that story went. I still ended up going to Africa, but I didn't end up moving over there. And then right afterwards, the pandemic hit and I was, knee deep into developing the house museum. So that is why, in answer to your question, if you've done business in Africa, why have you not relocated to Africa? That is why I have not relocated to Africa. I actually have tried several times throughout my adult life and something has always interrupted me. And so I'm done. I'm not trying no more. I'm here now. All right. The next one is, what is the one skill that entrepreneurs should have? Many of you know this if you follow me. The one skill that entrepreneurs should have, in my opinion, is sales. We have to know how to sell. And at the end of the day, with the ebb and flow of the fall of America, the turbulence that we're going through, if you know how to sell, you probably can find a through line and survive. But you got to know how to sell. You either have to know how to sell yourself, you need to know how to sell your ideas. When I say yourself, what I mean is you need to be able to go into an organization, convince them to hire you, sell your products, your services. You need to know how to sell your ideas, your concept. I mean, even in your family environment, you need to know how to sell because you may want to do something that's not popular in your family and you got to sell them on the idea of doing it. So sales, in my opinion, is that one skill that entrepreneurs should have and must really learn how to develop. And it's not easy. I started with a concept that I used to use called selling is sharing. And let me add to this. Coming out of corporate America, in the corporate world, and even in growing up, even though at home I was encouraged to be a mogul and do for self, at school that was not encouraged. So, I was taught to go to school 8 hours a day, be good, do all the extracurriculum activities, get good grades, get skipped up a grade, do whatever you got to do to be in good graces and follow that programming. And in following that programming, the whole concept of being in business didn't come to me, nor did the concept of sales. And when I really started to dissect my money psychology as I was learning to hone in on my sales skills, I realized that there was a kind of a low-key negative vibe towards sales people when I grew up. Because I remember how my grandmother used to cuss out the independent insurance man. Remember how the insurance man would come around, and I remember how, the idea towards people who sold things was negative. And, back in the late 70s, early 80s, growing up, people sold vacuum cleaners door to door, books and Tupperware, and those people kind of got a bad rap. And so in my mind, I saw that as like a low level way of doing business. I didn't tie sales skills to being a mogul. So I had to learn that later in life. And so I think sales is the number one thing. Here's the next thing. Next question. Don't you think that talking about religion in business is a turnoff? I don't think it's a turnoff. I know it's a turnoff to a lot of people. And I know that there's a lot of people that do not want to hear anything about business, period, point blank, and religion together. I just happen to take a different approach. My spirituality is a big part of my religion. It's a big part of my journey as an entrepreneur. I believe it's a big part of my divine calling. It's a big part of my anointing. And so it's impossible for me to separate the two. And I believe that if as a people we are going to achieve some form of economic development, we're going to need a lot of intervention, including divine intervention. Okay. And so for me, this thing that I do called business is very spiritual, and there's no separating it. Okay. And while I'm going through these questions, I have 1, 2, 3 left. Think about your questions. Don't put them in the chat yet until I tell you to, because then I'll lose them and I won't remember them. But I got 3 more questions that you all sent in. And then after that, I'll take a couple minutes and answer any questions that you have. And then that'll be it for our Q&A session. Okay, so here's the next one. How do we get access to capital when it seems like many of us have bad credit or don't have funding sources? This is very, very important. And I believe that we have to, as a people, have a concerted effort to invest in one another. I have to invest in you. You have to invest in me, whether we're bartering skills or whether or not you have a certain amount of money that you can invest in a particular project. I don't think we can wait until, investors and credit sources decide that they want to invest in us. They'll invest in our community, but in terms of investing in us as human capital, a lot of times they won't, because they just don't want to see us gain access to a certain amount of power or get ahead. So in my opinion, I think we have to do it ourselves. So people who are out here, if you are a rapper and you got millions of dollars, you're an entertainer, an athlete, you have to learn how to take your money and invest in projects that are important to your community or important to other Black entrepreneurs. We can't wait to just be able to say, okay, our top entertainer is the best entrepreneur in the world. I mean, that's a form of entrepreneurship, but in terms of some of the projects that people like myself and other people have, we have to invest in one another. I've invested in other people's projects. I've invested in projects in Africa. I've invested, as much as $50,000, even $100,000 in other businesses before. And I think that is what it's going to take, us uniting, us pooling our resources, because I just don't see on a massive scale people investing in our community. They look at us as philanthropic investments, if you will. So it's philanthropy. Okay, so it becomes through that vision. Okay, if I help Sister Sajdah with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, that's philanthropy, as opposed to it being you investing in my project where you can get a return on your investment, or whether I'll pay it forward. But I just think that that's something that we got to start refocusing our mind and refocusing our dollars. We have to start saying, and it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes people are just looking for $4,000 or $5,000 to invest or get their project off the ground. And we have to start financing one another. A lot of these other groups, especially a lot of immigrant groups, they finance one another until they get to the point where they can open up investment firms that focus specifically on their culture. So we got to get out of this thing of, how do I go to the bank and get some money? And how do I go to, this funding group, this investment bank and get some money, when we need to be our own investment bank? And it don't really take much. There's a lot of money in our community. There's a lot of us with money. There's a lot of us with enough money that can make a difference. Okay. My business partner and I, from the surgery center, we went into Liberia. His family is from Liberia we gave like $36,000. That built a whole clinic in Liberia. And we gave some medical equipment, like old stuff that we didn't want anymore. Because when we started out building the clinics, we used used equipment. And then as we started to make money, we started to trade that out. And we gave a lot of it to the clinics and stuff in Liberia. And that was major. And it was a major investment for the person on the receiving end of it. So, you know, I want you to think about that. I've invested in, you know, people's firms, their companies, music, movies, and in some cases I've gotten my money back, in a lot of cases I didn't. But I was able to pay forward, you know, what this money is, and so I think that's where we need to go, and that's where we need to focus, is investing in one another. And you'd be surprised, investing $1,000, a couple thousand into somebody now today could be worth millions of dollars later. And I just believe in the principle that you have to give in order to receive. So, you know, maybe at first I only invested $1,000, and then at another point I was able to give $36,000. Another point I was able to give $50,000. Another point I was able to invest $100,000. And investing and giving is two different things. So investing and giving is what you have to use your discernment with to figure out how to interact with somebody from a financial standpoint. So I've done both giving and investing, and I'm very conscious also. I tell you this, I'm very conscious also when I buy products or go to a restaurant or whatever I'm doing, that I'm buying and supporting somebody else that looks like me. And so I think we have to be more conscious about that. And I think our people are ready to, but that has to be part of our lifestyle. You know, everything you see me wear is something from a black company or a black store. Things that you see me, you know, places you see me frequent. I try to do it with that in mind. So that's my answer to that question. Second to the last question. Let me get some water. All right, second to the last question. How do we unite if we don't even like each other? Again, it's got to be a lifestyle. We got to get over our likes and dislikes with one another. See, let me remind y'all of something. And this is something that has stayed with us and generationally. How many people, let me know in the chat if you're familiar with Willie Lynch and the Willie Lynch letter. Pitting the light against the dark, the young against the old, the male against the female. And that competitiveness, that dislike, that distrust has rolled and evolved through generations all the way down to the whole hater culture that we have now. And so we have to make a concerted effort. For example, I'll give you something that, and a lot of women don't like to hear this, but I make it a point not to be disrespectful to men. I don't disrespect men unless I can help it. And even if they make me mad, I'm very careful. But that's a personal commitment, because I see how the black man is torn down on a daily basis, and how there's so much effort towards hating against them. And to the point where if we just see a man act like a man, we think it's toxic, you know, or we give it all these labels and titles, and, you know, and then you have men who don't act like themselves. They're not protectors. They're not, you know, husbands. They're not supportive of women. They don't like women. They have all these stereotypes and theories, and all they do is try to get over on women. So you have a lot of that, and I try to stay away from those type of situations, because I don't like to, if I can at all make sure and help it, disrespect men. That's just the thing. Like I said, one of my lifestyle tenets is that I try to buy black. I try to wear jewelry that means something. I try to make sure that things in my home represent my culture. and my travels and my accomplishments. So these are lifestyle things. And so that is how we unite, even if we don't like each other. We have to err on the side of those principles. Okay? We have to get over that. We can't. I don't male bash. So I'm not one of those sisters that don't like men and just don't like them and can't stand them, and everything I do is about, let me be against them. That's a personal commitment that I make because of what I see our men go through, and as a way of me honoring the great men that I've had in my life. And I hope that by being that as an example, I can show other women, and I just try to adjust so that I'm not in a situation where I feel like, now I got to cut you. Okay, last question here. Maybe you guys have some. Why does doing business in Chicago make sense? I love this question. Let's talk about nation building, and let's talk about legacy. Here's what's happening in metropolitan areas and cities throughout the U.S. I've heard a lot of people from a real estate standpoint say that cities like Chicago and New York are in trouble. And I believe that a lot of people have seen that handwriting on the wall. In New York, I think, and San Francisco, for example, I think the Asian real estate investors have seen that handwriting on the wall. I have friends who are real estate agents in New York, and they say, I can't remember the last time I sold a piece of property to a non-Asian person in the city of New York. This is what I think. A lot of these cities that people are abandoning and they running away from, you don't want to be a part of Chicago? I think it's time then for us to go in and set up our own territories where we can invest in the police department, have environments that are comfortable to us. People come from other countries and they do it all the time. You see them, they're going into these cities where maybe the majority of the white population has moved out and they're moving in. And you may see, a square mile radius where they're all Hispanic, or they're all Asian, or they're all Russian or Eastern European. People are doing that in the U.S. And so nobody's being afraid of these cities that are so-called falling, really, but us. And that's because it's almost like white people are bailing out and moving out of the cities. And we like, wait, hold on, where y'all going? And because we don't know where they're going and why they're going, and maybe we can't go where they're going, then we start going, well, yeah, okay, it's a problem with that city. But the way I look at it is this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad had plans to buy up the whole south side of Chicago. Think about this 100 years from now, where people would say, man, Chicago, Detroit, that's like Mecca, Medina. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad goes to the city of Chicago. He builds a nation. The nation falls. His star student, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, rebuilds it. And then the city grows into the point where now the majority of the city is owned by the black Muslims. What's wrong with that? So I just look at things from an economic standpoint better. This is the value of including prophecy and spirituality in the way that you do business. Because if I looked at that from a purely economic standpoint, it might be cause to panic. I might go, ooh, oh my God, But when I look at that from a prophetic and a spiritual standpoint, I say, okay, that's fine. Because now that's our opportunity to go into these cities and go into these blocks, clean up our own communities, create a police force and a judicial system that is fair and just and friendly to us. If other people don't want to be there, that's okay. But we're the only people that when everybody else moves out, we get scared and start moving out you know, but other cultures, you see them flocking to those areas. This happened like in Minneapolis. Then you start getting this large Eastern African population there. You see it happening in Detroit. People are saying that Chicago's in trouble. Well, what are we going to do? We've been wanting our own. See, listen, some of us think about separation and we think, okay, I got to go down south and build a whole community, get me some farmland. And that might be for you. But it also could mean that some of these distressed cities, and I did a whole talk on this on the radio, who will take over and who will take care of these fallen cities. But some of these fallen cities, we can go in and that's our community. That's our territory. That's what other people from other cultures do. They go in and they all get attracted to one particular area. That's why when you're going through a neighborhood, you say, oh, this is all Middle Eastern, or this is all Indian, or this is Chinatown. So we can learn to build that kind of thing for ourselves. We don't have to always panic because white people aren't moving in. We just have to qualify ourselves so that we learn how to control and manage and build the infrastructure. So how do you manage the water system? How do you manage the electronic grid, the electric grid? How do you manage the delivery of those municipal goods and services that are necessary for a city, trash and things like that? This is part of why we should be going to school to qualify ourselves. And this is happening sooner than later because a lot of the cities are falling and being abandoned. And sometimes after they infest the cities with drugs, then everybody goes to jail and then it's just, vacant and the commerce moves. And now you got this city that we could easily go into and take over. So that's why I think, Chicago's headquarters and everything great about America has happened in Chicago. So I don't see anything wrong with that. These fallen cities, if y'all want to bail out on a hospital, we should be ready to swoop in and take over that hospital and now start to provide fair and just healthcare services there. So you have to start to look at what's happening economically through the lens of prophecy and spirituality. And at the end of the day, if there's no divine intervention, we ain't gonna make it no way. So you better keep God in it. You better keep some spirituality in it because we're not qualified in a lot of cases. But that spirituality, that prophecy will give us that accelerant. All right, y'all. So let me know. Is there anybody else with any questions? I just answered. Let me see. I just answered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions from you all. Any other questions? I'll give it a few minutes. Make sure you go out and get your commemorative Elijah coin. Support the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum. It's time for us to start doing things independently. We got to stop asking folks to do for us what we could do for ourselves. And in the case of this house museum, it's an opportunity for us to control a big historical narrative in our community. It's an opportunity for us to show the world the truth and to show them how this history has become part of the fabric of America and how important it is, not only to us, but to the world. This is an opportunity. I've done most of the heavy lifting. It's a $4.4 million project, and I've put in $3.9 million for the most part of my own money. We got some sponsorships, but they haven't added up to $3.9 million. And so there's a little bit left to raise, and help us raise the funds, make a donation, purchase a commemorative Elijah coin. So somebody, Queen said, I sent 2 through IG. Did you type them here in the chat, sis? Because I don't want to click off and go to my messages because they may have come through after I started the broadcast. Okay. Oops, sorry. Fix my phone here. So type them here in the chat and I will attempt to answer them. So welcome. I see people chiming in. I'm just waiting on my sister Queen's questions to come through the chat. If you stick them in one at a time, I'll answer the first one, then I'll ask you to stick the second one in. If you DM the question to me, send it here in the chat. Do you know any angel companies? What does that mean, angel companies, sis? Do you mean angel investors? I'm assuming that's what you mean, like angel investment companies. I don't know any angel investment companies. I do know a lot of people that do crowdfunding. This is what I suggest that you do. And if you in the chat know of any angel investment companies, let me know. This is what I suggest that you do, and this is what I tell people to do. There are things you can do, like crowdfunding, but you got to put your proposal together, find somebody in your industry, find somebody you know, and just start getting the message out there that you need funding. Find something that you can sell to help you begin to fund your venture, to start putting you in different circles. Make sure you're going to conferences. There's investment conferences. There's inventors conferences. There's tech conferences if it's a tech product. There's food and beverage industry conferences where you can go out there and find people who will either invest in your product or people who will fund a large purchase of your product or service, which can get you going and get you started. But that's what I suggest. I actually have never in my years in business been acquainted with angel investors. That's just, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I just don't have any information on them. I probably do my stuff the old-fashioned way. I never got like a angel check from somebody. I would go to those conferences. If it's automotive, I'd go to automotive conferences. I'd go to whatever conference I could go to. I'd go there. I try to get a booth so I can showcase my product or services and pitch my products or services. And then that's how I've always gotten people to invest or partner with me or purchase my products and services. That's one of the ways that I've done it. Okay, what's your next question, Queen? I know you said you had a question. And is there anybody else that has a question? Otherwise, we are going to end our Q&A session for Monday, and I'm going to thank you all for being here. I will give it a couple of more minutes for those who oh, she said I answered both. Okay, family. All right, y'all. So make sure you tune in. Go out there and like and subscribe to the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad YouTube channel. When you go out there, you'll get notification on some upcoming broadcasts that I have coming up this week. There's Thursday night, The Mind of an Entrepreneur show. We're talking to Supreme Sweets, Brother Lance Muhammad. Saturday, the Sajdah Saturday morning coffee talks. Saturday afternoon, we're going to do a special broadcast. I'll let you know where that's going to be from, but that's related to our Enhance Your Savior's Day experience event. So, okay. All right, y'all. Peace and blessings, family. Love you all very much. Thank you for being supportive. And for everybody who's on here and everybody who listens, I wish you more goodness than you've ever received or imagined. I pray God's protection and peace over each and every one of you. And I pray that whatever you have in your mind that you want to invent, that you want to sell, that you find the ability to make that manifest into material reality. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Love you all, and great seeing you all as well midday. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum.